So did he do break and yeah, thank you. Or did he do break and continue as well? Okay. So
Yeah,
this
he did
class
break.
will so this class will be doing the other two kinds of loop in JavaScript before moving on to functions. Um, so as you all know, in JavaScript we basically have three main types of loops. We have for loops, we have while loops, and we have do while loops, right? In which do while is a lesser used case of loops, but we'll cover it nonetheless. Um, so what are while loops, right? Let's say we have a variable 0, variable a which is equal to 0. We want to print, let's say, all the values of 0 as it increases towards 10, and we want to stop as soon as it reaches 10 or just before it reaches 10, right? So let's what kind of loop can we write for that? We like what is the shortest loop that we can write to just print all the values of a as it increases towards 10? Can anyone say, like, does anyone have an answer?
Come again for the question.
Let's say we have a variable a, right? And we keep increasing the variable's value, right? So currently it is 0, it goes to currently it is 0, it goes to 1, 2, 3, so on so forth, till let's say just before 10, right? So it reaches 9 at max, right? And we want to print all the values starting from 0 to 9. What kind of loop would we use?
I mean, you can use all kinds of loops like for
We can,
do
yes, we
while
can use all kinds of loops, but which is the most streamlined method, which
for.
won't
I think,
require, huh?
I think for like for I
Uh,
equal to 0, I is less than 9, I plus plus.
well, you can use that, but then you are again declaring a variable I which has already been declared, and you are writing unnecessary steps which are not really required. Better off you can write the while loop, right? It requires much less effort in this case, though it has different scenarios of being used, but we can also use it in this particular way, right? So we will, so the syntax for while loop is that you have the while loop itself, right? The while condition, the while statement, then you have the first brackets, right? And in between the first brackets you write the statement that when it is true, the the loop will get executed, right? So right now the value of a is 0, right now the value of a is 0, therefore the loop is getting executed the first time around because a is less than 10. So if we console.log a, we will get a value outputted in the console. Now if we keep increasing a using the post decrement operator, right? If we keep increasing the value of a, then at a point it will reach 10, right? Which it should not, because at reaching 10 the while statement will become false, in which case a will be equal to 10, therefore the loop will no longer run. So through the while loop, right now it should display all the integers between 0 to 10, 0 to 9, I mean, right? And it will end just before 10, the which is the statement which is true to the statement that we have given in the condition of the while loop, right? So if we see, yes, so we can see that it is printing all the integers from 0 all the way to 9. Is everyone clear, or should I repeat again?
Yes.
Right, so this is basically the for loop, and all the break and continue statements that you have used in for loop, they work very similarly in while loop, so I won't be explaining how to use break and continue in while loop as well. They work pretty similarly, right? So Let's move on to the next kind of loop, which is the do while loop, right? What is the difference between a do while loop and a while loop? Not just in
Checks
JavaScript,
the
in general.
condition, like I think checks the condition after the loop and checks the condition before the loop.
Can you repeat?
Checks the condition after the loop and checks the condition before the loop. I think that's the biggest difference.
Yes, it checks the condition once before executing the loop, and then every other time it checks after finishing the loop.
And
Yes.
that's for while, and do while it only checks after like the loop executes.
No, like in case of do while, it will execute once before the loop. It won't execute after the loop, right? In case of do while, it will.
The loop will execute once before it
Yeah,
checks
yeah,
the.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the loop will execute once before. The syntax of do while loop is basically do while this is the statement, right? And it will like execute the program while the statement is true, and it will execute the statement once execute the program once before saying before checking the while statement, right? So we did cover Boolean operators, right, in class. Sorry, Boolean variables.
I have a
Or
question. If what would differentiate between a do while loop and a while loop? Because you just showed us what the
yeah,
while loop did. So
yeah,
what?
yeah. I'll be showing that right now. But did you all cover Boolean variables in the past during the course of the summer camp? Boolean variables being the ones that have the values true.
Uh,
Okay.
we didn't necessarily touch on it, but we did see a few examples.
Yeah, you don't have a lot to touch on Boolean variables, so I think your current knowledge is enough for the camp right now. So let's say we have a variable a, which is true, right? And let's write a while loop, a simple while loop, which will not work obviously, because as we are going to see, the statement which has been given in the statement which has been given in the while loop is false, so it won't execute the program even once, right? So it should not execute the program even once, and it should just skip past the whole statement because the statement is false, right? Now let's write the same program, but this time while using a do while loop. Would anyone like to predict what could be the answer, what could be the output in this case? Would anyone like to predict the output in this case? You can write it in the chat or use the mic.
Just a sec.
Okay, Anvit saying do while. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would also go with do while.
Do while.
Do while, okay. So if we run this, we see that it's printing do while once, right? So this is where the main difference between a while and a while loop comes, right? So in case of the while loop, it's saying that the statement in the while loop, right, in the first brackets is false. So it's skipping over the whole loop and not even trying to enter the loop and like execute whatever is inside the loop. It's skipping past the whole thing, right? But in case of the do while loop, it's first executing the loop once, right? It first executes the loop once and then it checks the while statement, right? And in this case, it sees that the while statement is false, so it no longer executes the loop after executing it once. So we see that it executes do while once and then the loop stops. So this is the main difference between a while loop and a do while loop. Did everyone understand? Do we have any doubts?
No. I have a question. It's a bit off topic, but what I think Swapnil, he said that the notes would be uploaded. Have the
Yeah,
notes been
actually,
uploaded? He basically,
yeah, actually,
yeah,
we
you were
have been
saying.
a bit, yeah, we have been a little bit busy in the past few days, so we could not upload the notes. We'll upload it
Oh,
as
okay,
we
okay,
call, as soon as we can, right?
oh,
Don't
okay.
worry, they will be uploaded before the summer camp ends, so you all will be having the notes at the end of the summer camp. Um, right. So let's see do while in case of a numeric example, how it will work in response to in comparison to a while loop. Let's say a is 0 and let's say b is 0. Both integers equal both variables equal to 0, and then we run them through a and then we execute a while loop in which a is, let's say, less than 10. Right. So as we can see, uh, as we can see, when we just execute this program, it's a simple while loop. It's a very simple while loop. It just increases the values of a by 1 each time the loop is run, and then it prints the value of a in a statement. The number is a, right? So this is a very simple program, and we can see the output is that it prints all the numbers from 0 to 9 consecutively. So this is a very standard output. Now in case of do while, let's see how do while does the same thing. So what do you all predict will be the answer of the will be the output of this loop? The chat is open, please, or you can answer to the mics. Anyone? 1 till 10, including 10. Okay, Shoptoshi is saying it will include 10. Anyone else? Anvit?
The first will include till 9, and the second one will have till 10.
Okay, anyone else? Um, I'm not really seeing a lot of active people right now.
Just a sec. Like I process things slow.
If you still have any doubts regarding the do while loop, you can ask before answering.
Huh. The first will be without 10 and second will be like with 10, I think.
So when we run the program, we see that it in fact does not print 10. Can anyone guess why it did not print 10?
Wait. I think in the second one, like when the number is 9, it increments, then while then the loop checks for if it's less than 10 or not, and then it sees that it's already 10 and doesn't execute. Is it something like that?
Yes, it's something very similar. So like, let's see
It's
how the loop
already
is
implemented,
actually,
right?
yeah. Yeah, so let's see how the loop is executing, right? So the first time the loop checks that the number is 0, right? Actually, the do while loop does not check. So the first time it just prints 0. The next time it prints 1, and then it checks if the condition is still true or not. And it sees that 1 is still less than 10, so it runs a loop again. And it does that all the way till, let's say, 9. So in case of 9, it prints 9 because after executing after printing 8, it sees that 8 is still less than 10. So it runs the loop once again, and it prints 9, and then it goes to the 10th number. Then it goes to 10, right? But in case of 10, it sees that the number is equal to 10, so it does not go forward and run the loop again, and therefore it stops after printing till 9. Did everyone understand?
Yeah.
Anvit, Shaptarshi?
So the operator functions, but due to that while statement being there, it sees that it goes against the given instruction, so it just doesn't print it.
Yeah, it's this is because like the loop is running like earlier than the function, right? And so when it checks the 9th time, it just increments it by 10, right? So let's say it's printing 9 right now. So it has just printed 9, and now it will increase the value to 10. But then it goes on to the while statement, and it sees that 10 is actually not less than 10. Wow. And then it just stops printing further, and therefore we only get the answer till 9. Did you all understand?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Any doubts you can ask. It's a very the number of people in the class are very limited, so don't be shy. You can ask. Okay. It seems there are no doubts, so we'll be moving on to functions. Now there are multiple ways of calling functions. You can call functions like a class in JavaScript, but we won't be following that, right? We won't be following class-based functions in the current course. We'll be mainly going to the modern way of using functions, which is by declaring it as a function without calling the classes, right? So let's say I have a function create var. It's a very simple function. It will just create a variable essentially, nothing more. And let's say we want to console.log the properties of a, or the value of a essentially. So we'll just console.log a, right? Now it won't run. Can anyone tell why? Does anyone know why this program won't run? Though I've written a function which has a value which has been assigned to a variable, and which is supposed to console log that value. Yes. I've got an answer from Shoptoshi. Anyone else?
Have we done functions before?
We have not done functions before. This is the first time we are touching on. That's why I am asking you to predict the output. If you know the output, or if you can guess, whatever works.
My guess would be it conflicts because there's always already been a variable established, and before that we have put a function to create a variable. That's what I think. I'm not really sure.
Okay. I You are a bit wrong, Moitra. The thing is that there are no variables before this. A does not have any value prior to being called in this function, right? The problem with this program was I did not call the function in our program, right? So there are two parts of a program. If you take if you take a function, right, you can almost divide the program into two parts: the place where you make the functions and the places where you call the functions, right? Now why do we need to call the functions? Functions are essentially like variables, right? Now you can't Yes, to execute them. Yes, basically. Like let's say you can to create a variable you can write var a, right? But will you will like if you write a program which only has var a, will you be getting an output in the terminal giving you the value of a? Let's say I write a is equal to 10. Will I get the value of a in the terminal if the program only has one line var a is equal to equal to 10? No, right? Unless I console.log it. Exactly. On with it's calling a function is very similar to that. You basically cannot expect a function to run without calling it after making the function, right? So in this case, my function create var, I did not call this function. That's why it could not run successfully. But now if I run this, I should be getting an output of 10. Uh, did I was I able to explain the functions clearly? Does anyone have a doubt?
No, sir.
I didn't quite get it.
Acha, acha. Let's think about functions as like your variables, right? Let's forget about functions and let's just think about variables. If we try to console.log after, yes, it will still what? Wait, console after executing the function. I'll be continuing that Shoptoshi later. We'll have to go through a return statement for that to work. Uh, right now, let's think about a variable, right? Let's say you have a variable a. Now a is a variable, a exists in this program, right? It has a value, but it is not showing as any values in the terminal, right? If we run this program, do we get any values
No,
in the
you
output?
don't.
We don't get any values, right? Why is this?
Because we need to mention it's we need to do print it. We need to state like console login. So there
Yeah,
needs to be
so we need the variable to do some work, that is to output itself in the terminal, right? You can think of functions almost like you can almost think them as commands. You can almost relate them to commands, right? If you don't let's say if you don't command the computer to do something, it won't do something for you automatically, right? Let's say you have like you want your computer to like run a particular application, right? Now you want the computer to do that, but you have not commanded or you have not like made your computer run the application till now. So the computer won't out of curiosity run the application on its own. You need to make the computer run the application or whatever you want to run for the computer to run it for the computer to like open the application and stuff, right? You can't expect the computer to do that on its own, right? So all of these commands, right, they think of the commands as calling a function and think of what you want to do as the function itself, right? In this case, let's say I want to create a variable. The name of the function is quite self-explanatory. I want to create a variable and I want to print its output to the console, right? Therefore, I'm declaring a function, and now I want the function to occur, or I want the computer to run the function. Therefore, I call it and I tell the computer that this is the function, and now you have to run the function. Therefore, the computer goes on to run the function. But if I don't call the function after like naming the function or after creating the function, the computer won't understand if it has to run the function or not. Therefore it will decide not to run the function after all. Did you understand, Moitro?
Yeah, thank you.
Can you repeat? I could not
I
get your
said yeah, I did understand. Thank you.
okay, right. Doubt is v in var. No, in JavaScript, when you are usually writing functions, you follow a naming convention which is called Camel Case. And how does Camel Case work? You know camels, right? They have humps. Like, so there is like the humps are like shaped in such a way that either side of a hump is like a slope, right? And it's almost like a what can I say? It's almost like a wave, right? It has troughs and it has crests, right? So it has a high value and then it has a low value. Similarly, when you are writing the names of a function, you usually start with a small letter, right? Let's say k. Let's say I want to write a function delete variable, right? So how will I write the variable? How will I write the function? I'll usually write it like this. I'll usually take the two words that I want to convey through the naming of the function, right? So the two words, let's say delete and variables, right? And then I'll just remove the spaces between them, and I'll keep the second, and I'll keep the first word, the first letter of the first word small, and every proceeding first letter of the first, every proceeding first letter of the other words as capital, right? So like if I wanted to write delete variables a, delete variables all, then I'll write it like this, right? So the first word that you are writing in the function, let's say create, right? So this create will have its first letter in small, right? Its first letter being C, it will have it small. Whereas the second letter, which is var in our case, will have its first letter in capitals. Did you all understand? This is a camel case convention. You can follow it up. Like if you Google search it, you'll just find it. If you want to further understand camel case, I'll suggest just googling it. Did you all understand? Yes. So this is basically a naming
Yes.
convention. You don't have to, yes, you don't have to worry about it a lot. Just remember when you are creating like names of functions, just split. Just remember what is the name of the function. Let's say kill all robots, and you just remove the spaces, and then you keep the first letter of the first word small and the first letter of every proceeding word capital. This is basically camel case, right? So let's move on to parameters. What are parameters? Can anyone tell me what parameter means in the general sense? Not in case of programming, but in like the general sense of the word. Anyone in chat? Anyone would like to speak? Acha. Can anyone tell me the meaning of parameter outside of programming? Like meaning of parameters. This word outside of programming. Like a set of rules. Yes. So would anyone else like to try?
In the most basic sense, it could mean a form of limit or a boundary or a cap.
Yes. So it's very similar to rules like caps, boundaries, more like rules, right? But does this like can anyone have any other like any other sense? Can anyone just like to say any other meaning? Like I mean I don't know English, so I can say okay, okay, Anjishnu, fine. Uh, well, parameter outside of programming means basically a set of rules. You can almost say like a guidebook. But in the case of programming, parameters are basically, let's say, values that we want to push through the function, right? Like values that we want to use in the function, or like the things we want to pass into the function so that the function could use it to give us a desired output, right? Let's say we have a variable named variable, right? And we want to use this variable in our function, right? We want to use the value of this variable, and we want to console.log the word variable, right? Now we can of course go the less correct way, and we could just console log it, which is not even the less correct way. It is a like it is a good way, but it is very inefficient, because now if you change the value of variables to anything else, right? Let's say you change it to this, then it won't log variables anymore, right? It will sorry, it won't log this. It will still log variables, which is not what we want. We want it to console log the very value of the variable like variable, right? So how do we do this? Does anyone can anyone predict how we will be using parameters to solve this problem? Anybody in chat? Anjishnu? Acha, I know I'm interpreting. Is it okay if I leave at one? Yes, it is okay. You can leave at one. I'll be sending the recordings later on. Log the variable name, not the string value. I mean, we can do that, but uh, in the case, like, let's say we want to use parameters, right? We don't want to console log the value by itself. We want to pass it through a parameter. How will we do that? I don't know what parameters are, so I don't know. Okay, so I guess I'll be going through parameters. The variable isn't global, then pass it into the function with a different in function name and then log that. Yes, you can do that, but right now we'll be going into parameters, so I don't think I will be covering that. Okay, so what are parameters, right? In a function, the function itself can accept a certain number of values, right? It can accept a certain number of things that you can pass on when you are calling the function, right? uh, what are you can do a lot of things, right? Let's say there's this variable which is a string essentially, which says, right, now let's say I want to make a function such that did I cover slicing, string slicing in any class? I did. Okay, so let's say I want to print this particular part of the string, right? Let's say this is I want to print or console.log this is right, and I want to write it using a function, and I want to do that using a function, right? But I don't want to do it like a hard coded or anything, right? I want to do it such that if I like anything that I pass through here, it will like print, it will like cut till this is a, and then it will print the output, right? How do I do it? I need to pass the variable into the function. Now, how do we do that? As we see, like we have these two first brackets, right, beside the name of the function. In between these two brackets, whatever we write becomes a parameter that we can pass in through the function, right? So we can use the value of the parameter in the function to like run the function with desirable input, right? Now, how do we use parameters, right? Let's say this function variable has two parameters, a and b, right? A being whatever string we want to use. Let's say we have two variables, variable 1, variable 2, and variable 2 represents, right? So there are two variables, right? Now a variable a or parameter a will basically represent any string, right? And in case of parameter b, we are using numbers. So how will we proceed in the program? We'll just take, we'll just const, we can just use const a, or sorry, we can just use var a is equal to a. That will give us the value of a to a variable, right? Now we have we have the value of the parameter a in a variable, right? Now we can also take the value of parameter b in in another variable, right? Now we have the values of both parameter a and parameter b in two variables. Now what do we want to do? We want to slice whatever string we get till whatever string we get, which is basically a, and we want to slice it for the first B characters, right? So the string is basically A, and the number of characters that we want to slice is B, right? So we'll go on to write A. We'll just create a variable C, which will be A dot slice 0 comma B. Now, since I have covered slice in the previous class, I think, was it the previous class? I don't really remember, but I think we have covered slice. So in the
The
second class,
second
yes.
class.
Yeah, so I won't be covering slice again. But basically it will cut the values between 0 to it will cut the string from 0 to just before B, and it will print it, right? So if we right now if we run the function, wait, I did not console log it. Yes, so right now if we just call the function later on, will we get any values? Will we get any like number, any values in the output? Can anyone guess what will we get in the output if we run the function just as it is right now? Shoptoshi, Anvit, anyone? Anjishnu? Can anyone predict what will be the output? Shoptoshi says error. Anyone else? Calls no value of B. But do we even have a value of A, Shoptoshi?
Isn't I'm telling this from CPP, like isn't
Yeah.
any like variable declared gets a random value
No, 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 no,
like
no.
from
Uh,
CPP?
no, that does not work. When you declare a variable, it basically defaults to null. It does
Okay,
not get any
like
random value.
so it's Java.
It's JavaScript, and I don't know how it works in Java, so I won't be confirming or denying that. But if we run the program, we see that there is an error. What? Yeah. So the error has come since A and B are basically undefined, or there is no value of A or B in this particular program, because we see that we are passing two parameters in the function create var, right? We are passing two parameters in the function create var, but now how will the computer know what will be the values of A and B? Like, we know that the value, let's say value of B, we want it to be like, let's say 5. We want the value of B to be 5. Now, how will the computer understand that we want the value of A, or what we want the value of B to be? Does the computer currently understand what we want the value of A or B to be in the function? Does the computer understand that? Hello, anyone in the chat? Maybe. No, it doesn't. Yes, you are right, Anvit. It does not understand that we want the value of A to be variable or variable 2, and it also does not understand that we want the value of B to be variable X. So what do we do to make the computer understand that we want the value of A, which is a parameter, to be equal to variable or variable 2, and the parameter B to be variable X? We simply just write the names of the variables, with the commas, when we call the function. That's as simple. That's as simple as it gets. We just basically just write the name of the variables separated by commas. Now what will the computers what will the computer see when it looks at the program right now, right? So it will see that there is a function which needs two values, a and b, to run. It needs two parameters to run because we are using the values of a and b to calculate whatever part of the string we want to print, right? We are see we want to the computer sees that we need to that it needs to print particular part of the string, and to print that particular part of the string it needs two values, a and b, right? A being the string and b being the number. Now it just and then it skims over the function, and then it sees that we have called the function here. Now when it's seeing that we have called the function here, it also looks as what we have put inside the first brackets, right? It sees that we have put the variable as the first uh, item inside the bracket, and x as a second item inside the bracket. Now what will the computer interpret from this line? Like, what will it understand? What it compares a with var? It's more like it assigns a to var and b to x, right? It does not compare anything. It just basically assigns the value of var to a and assigns the value of x to b. Is it clear? Like, did anyone understand? Did all understand? Yes, Anvit. Acha, is it necessary to do? It is not necessary, but since I'm not going to be teaching the flaws of parameters right now, so I won't be going into why what the errors can be if you don't use var is equal to var b is equal to b or a is equal to a. Basically, the exclusive things. Did everyone understand? I need some confirmation in chat. Or
Yes.
Anvit. Yes, Anvit understood. Anjishnu, Shaptarshi.
I did.
Okay. So I'll be moving on. Yes, Mohit, right. Okay. So basically, now what the program will do is that it will see that there are two parameters a comma b, and then it will see the callback. Sorry, and then it will see that you have called the function at line number 18, and then what it will do is that it will basically change a here to variable, and it will change b here to x. Wait, yeah, it will change b here to x, right? And then it will be and then in the program it will give the value of a as variable and the value of b as x, and then in the proceeding program it will run the program with those particular values. So if we run the program, we will see that it will work, and it will print the first four letters, as we have already seen in, I think, the previous class, that a string always starts with the 0th letter, moves on to the first letter, second letter, third letter, fourth letter, and so on and so forth. So it will basically start from 0, 1, 2, 3, and then it will stop before it reaches 5. So it will basically stop at 4. Sorry, also there's a space here. If you can't see, there's a space here. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, so 5 would be this one, but it's not doing the fifth one because it stops before the fifth one. Is functions clear to everyone? You could also use it. Yes, we could just basically just remove this and use 0, 5 as well. And it will do the same thing. Okay, Shopter shares a doubt. Does anyone else have any doubt? If not, please write in the chat. if I do a Shoptoshi, can I answer your question later? Because we have not yet covered const or and let and all that. We have only covered var. Okay. So moving on. What I'll be teaching you next is return. Right. Can anyone guess what the use of return could be in a function? By the way, return is used in a function.
Like literally returns the value of the variables from that function.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a very it does its function in a very literal sense. It basically returns whatever the value might be that you are getting from the function. So let's say var a is equal to 10, right? Now I want to return the value to where it is being called, right? So let's say the function is being called here, create var, right? And let's say I want to console log the value here. Currently, oh shit, yeah. Currently, it won't console log any value because, well, it does not have any value to, because this function is currently not returning any output. Acha, Anjesh, no, okay. You can go. I'll be giving you the recording by the end of tomorrow. Okay, so continuing. Create var, right? Now it's being called here, but create var is currently not giving you any output. Why is that? Can anyone tell me why? Even though I'm calling the function right here in line number 8, I'm not getting any values. Swapnil De. It seems Swapnil has returned. It needs to be console logged outside the it needs to be console logged inside the curly braces because create var isn't returning anything. No, Anvit, the thing is that you can console dot log inside the curly braces. That's a way of getting the output, but currently we don't want to do that, right? Yes, Shoptoshi, precisely. It's because create var isn't returning any values. So if it did not return any values, the console does not have anything to output. Therefore, it's giving an undefined value, right? But let's say to return a value in a function, we just use the return statement. We can just return a, right? And it will just return a, right?
Hello.
Is it clear why we are using return? কিছু বলছিস স্বপ্নিল?
No, I just said hello.
Hello. Okay.
Class চলছে. Antara, Anvit, Areman, Moitro, Shaptoshri. Hello again. I am not taking your class ajke. I had something else. Hello, Anvit. Hello, Shaptoshri. Yeah, sorry, I'm taking 5 minutes, 2 minutes of your class. You can go back to it. I'll leave shortly.
Right. Does everyone understand why we are using the return statement? Or do I have to explain myself again? Yes, I need more people to answer. There's only like one person who is writing in the chat.
Hi, Antara, you were participating the last class. Mein Areman type as well. Moitro.
I did not even realize Aryaman was in the class. He has like not even agreed to anything, I think.
Acha, hey, you do realize that this is going to be reflected in your finally, na? I know the timing isn't ideal. Must be asleep.
You see, like for your timing, you must blame your friends. It's not like the vote was rigged or anything.
Yeah. See, I mean, okay, like, we're not telling you to do anything, but sure.
Well, I mean, isn't it forced the recording exists? Yeah, the
It
recording.
doesn't.
Exactly. Acha, but returning on to the class,
All right. Take it. Tada.
everyone
Love you. Good night. Good night.
actually,
Yes. Take it.
right. So does everyone understand why we are using the return
Yes.
statement? Okay, good. Now, acha, you can return multiple values. Yes, you can return multiple values. But in the case of returning multiple values, I would suggest using it like this. Wait, a comma b. So why isn't it printing a comma b? Um, okay. Well, the thing is that in JavaScript, you can return at a time only like the value of only one variable, right? What I was trying to do was I was trying to I was trying to store the values of two variables together so that yeah, or you can use arrays. Yes, you can use arrays, Shoptoshi, but I was not trying to go into arrays because I have not covered it yet. But in a JavaScript array, at a time, you can only return one object or one item, basically, right? So if there is A and B, right, you can't return A space B or A comma B directly, right? You can't do that. It will only give one of them, right? I am not quite sure why it's giving B and why it was giving A earlier, but it will only give one object or one item, right? In case you do use commas, does it mean the return? Does it return to the latter value or is it random? I am not really sure about this, but it seems that it's giving the latter values right now. But basically, it will only give one value, right? So it's not ideal that you pass in two values to a. It is not ideal that you pass in two values through a like a function, right? But let's say if we create var c and if we store the values of a in c, is there a way to specify the value we want to print while returning? Yes, let's say you want to print the greater value. You will just use a ternary operator, right? You can just say like uh, what can you say? You can just say a less than b, then it will do something. Let's say it will return a, or maybe it will this might print an error. I don't really know if it will work or not, but let's try. No, I don't think it works with return. So if you want to do it otherwise, you can just do if a is less than b, then it will let's say return b. If a is less than b, we wanted to return b, so we can just do return b. Otherwise it can just return a. So yes, you can specify what you can return and it will return that particular. Wait, did I do this again? Yeah. So a is less than b, so it will return b this time, right? But if we say a is greater than b, then it should return, yeah, it should return a. This is how, basically how it works. Moitra, is your question clear? If you want to return a
Yes.
particular, yeah, if you want to return a particular thing, you can just use a if statement. I thought ternary operators worked, but I guess they don't. Or if they work, I'll be sure to inform you later. Um, okay, so that is that. The return statement basically returns whatever values that you want to return. So will I move on to the next part, or does anyone have any class up any doubts until what I've taught in the class right now?
It's a bit of weird. It's a weird question I have, but you said that you just mentioned that if bracket a is greater than b, but a is not greater than b, but it still returned the value a. So in what logic does that work?
Do you mean wait? I'll just to make
No,
sure
you
that I
did. Yes, yeah, you did.
yeah.
A is greater than B, and it did
Uh,
return
no, no, no,
10.
no. Is this does this read as A is greater than B?
Oh no, this doesn't read great. I think, or was it? I probably
Yeah,
yeah, it was
I
a
am
mistake on
pretty
my
sure
end.
because I did because I undid all the things. I am pretty sure it was this all along. But
Okay,
if you
then
still
never mind.
want, I will be running it. So A is less than B, it's returning B, right? Since A is less than B. Now, if A is greater than B, it's returning A. Since A is not greater than B. Is it clear, Mohitro?
Okay, yeah, it's clear now. It's clear now.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to the other parts. What what can we do next? Okay. Right. So there is a particular way of using functions in JavaScript which is called expressions. Right. It's very similar to how we use variables. It's very similar to how we use variables, right? Let's say I will teaching you the syntax first, right? So you understand the syntax. Right. So this is basically the syntax of how you declare an expression. An expression is basically you assigning an function to a variable, right? And in our case, the function, and in the case of expressions, the function never has a name, right? Thus a function cannot have a name if you want to call it an expression, right? You to assign it to a variable, you cannot have it such that your function has a name, right? So what does expression do, or like what is the function, like what is how do we use expressions in our program, right? Let's say there is a variable a, right? And you want it such that whenever the variable a is called in your program, you will be passing some values, let's say the values of prior variables, variable b or something like that, which is like this, right? Let's say you have the variable this and you want to pass it out and you want to like console log, and then you want to console log whatever, you know, whatever you are getting, right? So basically what you can do is that you can just pass stuff through a function, through an expression, right? You don't have to like you know pass it anywhere else. You can just pass it directly and it should work. Wait, oh no, sorry, it won't work if you pass it directly, right? But you basically name it alongside a variable. It's basically another way of creating a function, right? It's like you can use this or you can use any other method, right? You can even call a classes, you can even call a new function. You can just say like var like my function. Sorry, my typing is a bit off, it's 12 a.m. You can just create a function like this as well. And this is also a way of declaring functions, but this is a very old method, right? But nonetheless, it's another way of creating a function and you can call my function later on. Acha, if we do function name this, then console dot log it without calling it, like console does it do the same thing. Wait, what? We do function name and then console dot log it without calling it. Can you send a reference code, Shaptarshi? I cannot understand your doubt through what you have written. মানে এমনি ফাংশনটা বাংলা বলবো। Okay, let's try that out. Let's try that out. Oh, actually, like we have already tried it out. So, wait. Right. So what Shaptarshi was asking was that if you were not asking this, like if we do a function, acha, so you will be doing a function a, acha, yes, like this, right? So if you run it, it should still work, right? But it is not actually giving us the desired output. It's just like telling us that this is a function. But if we actually put the first brackets around it, right, then it will actually run whatever is inside the function. Like if you forget to like give the first brackets after calling a function, it will generally just console log the name of the function followed preceded by function, right? But it won't execute whatever is inside. To execute it, you need to call it as a function, right? And if you call it as a function, then it like works, right? Is your doubt clear, Shaptarshi? Acha, okay, understood. Okay. Yeah. Did you all understand what an expression is, or do I need to repeat myself? Moitro, anyone? I'll be repeating, I guess, myself nonetheless because no one is answering right now. Basically, an expression is basically another way of calling a function, right? Right. It is just another way of calling a function. Like I can very well do three more ways of calling my functions, right? Wait, I'll be showing you all the ways I know of calling a function so that it's clear. No, by the way, we can use return like this. We can directly return uh like we can directly return values instead of returning variables, right? But we can only return one value at a time. You should all remember this, that we can only return one value at a time, not more than a single value, right? Now moving on to the last way. Right. Now if we go ahead and console log each of these functions, right? Let's start with the first one, the expression way of declaring a function as we have taught, as I have taught. Webhub. Okay. Webhub, why are you entering the class so late? Anyways, you can just DM me your name since you were present in the class nonetheless. But from the next class onwards, do not enter the class this late. It's already pretty late. The class is already being held pretty late. Do not enter the class any further late in these kinds of scenarios. Right. So, can anyone tell me what will be the answer? What will be the output in this case? Moitro, Antara. Okay. Okay, Vaibhav. Moitro, Antara, Anvit, Shoptoshi, Aryaman. You all can try, like trying won't hurt. So thinking, okay. Hint, none of these functions will work because we have not yet called them. So none of these functions will yet work. So expression. Yes, Anvit, I did mention the meaning of an expression. This is basically this way of making a function, right? Like we have learned that this is the standard way of defining a function, right? I think I have taught. No, I mean it will print expression. Acha, acha. It will print expression, right, Moitro? Uh, do you think it will print expression, or are you still thinking about what it will print? Shoptoshi, anyone else? Yes, expression. Okay. 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 Moitro, are you going along with expression because of the majority vote, or do you really think it will print expression? Nah, acha. Okay. I think expression, not really sure. It will actually return expression. Wait, what? Unexpected token. Wait, I guess. Wait. Two classes work. Wait, I'll be just running this code in my browser, in my personal computer once. Just to make sure that it is probably my fault and not the fault of the compiler. Right. Right. It's basically my fault. My syntax was a bit off. Uh, Wait. Right. I hope you all can see my screen share. Yes. Maybe comment out maybe comment out the rest of the code, I guess. Well, it won't take much time, so just wait a second. I had a syntax error because I don't use this kind of this way of calling functions usually. Wait. This method is really outdated. You don't usually use you don't try to use new classes in JavaScript very often. It's more function based, right? So it will print expression in this case. Why? Because this is because basically it's a function, because basically the variable a is being assigned as a function, right? The variable a is being assigned to a function which is returning expression. So anytime we call the variable a, the function which is returning expression is being called. So it is basically whenever we see an instance of this variable a, it just basically acts as like this new function, right? As it's basically like calling this new function, but when you are calling a, you get you get it like the function is getting called in a slightly different way than the standard way, right? Can you all understand? Like imagine like you want to express the same thing, right? If you want to express let's say you want to express pain, right? Or you want to express, let's say, something cold, right? You can say that ice is cold. You can say that, let's say, liquid nitrogen is cold, right? You can also say that uh, cold drinks are cold, right? All of these items are cold. Like all of these items can be said to be cold. In the same way, you can like assign, you can call functions in many different ways, right? So this is one of the ways, and this is this along with the standard way are probably the most used ways, right? Can you all understand? If you can understand, please type out in the chat or answer using the mic. Anyone? Can anyone understand expressions? I'm really sorry today we don't have slides for you to understand because we had some prior issues with creating slides. Acha, could you explain once more why you typed A and not A? Acha, so since we know that A is basically acting as the name of the function in the expression, so whenever we are calling A, the function is getting called, right? Therefore, as we have seen in as we have seen a few minutes ago, that when we call the name of a function without putting the first brackets, it will basically print function followed by the name of the function, right? This, it won't basically execute what is there inside the function, because when you are console logging A, it is basically seeing that A is a function, so it's saying that the function is A. It's not trying to execute the code inside of the inside of the variable A, right? It's not executing the code inside. It's just seeing that A is a type of variable which is calling a function. It's not doing anything else, right? And yes. And when you are putting the first bracket, it basically sees that yeah, A is now a function, so I have to call the function. And and not only do I have to call the function, I have to also return the output, right? But if you remove the first bracket, it basically just says, this is just a function, so I'll just output function followed by the name of the function. It won't actually execute what is there inside the function, right? Now let's go on to the second way of creating a function, which is using classes. And I won't be touching I won't be touching upon my like creating classes in a very in-depth manner, because we won't be covering classes in your summer camp course this time around. So if we see it will just return class, right? So what is happening, I'll just be teaching you briefly. It is basically creating a variable, my function, then it's calling a class. Now what is a class? A class, you can understand a class as basically a place where the function is getting stored, right? It's a place where the function is getting stored, and now you are calling the function from that particular place where it is getting stored, and then you are passing whatever you want to write. Now why have I written this as string? Because you basically have to write whatever the function will execute in the class in form of a string. This is basically how it was meant to be. This has no like reason or rhyme, right? Just it is how it is. Basically you can't like call a class as a function, so you have to give whatever you want the function to execute inside this first brackets, inside quotations, right? Is everyone clear? Like I won't explain this any further, but did everyone get the gist of how this works? Yes, it's clear. Anyone else? I'm seeing that Anvit is answering pretty often. Antara, she's recording the meeting, but I don't think she's very active. I don't think she has answered a lot.
I didn't.
Moitriya, huh?
I didn't answer because I thought that it would come in the chat. Like the chat
Right.
would come in the recording.
You can just still like don't get intimidated by the chat. People are answering. You can also answer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Moitriya, anyone else? Anyone else? Shoptarshi, Vaibhav. Sorry, but I heard everything. Okay. So did you understand? Moitro, acha. No doubts. Okay. Right. So I guess I'll be moving on to the last way right? This is basically the standard way, and since I have covered it in depth a few minutes ago, so I won't be going in depth again. It is basically the standard way of calling a function. You write the name of the function, you get you give the two curly braces, then the computer sees the function, it sees that you are calling it here, and then it just returns a value. This is as simple as that, right? So do I have anything else left to cover? Is this clear, by the way? Did people understand this? No doubts. Okay, so like, is there any
So like
major
we
difference
write a
between
function, then it will like the output will be expression. If we write new function, then the output will be standard.
Yeah, this is because we are like giving it different things to return. But do you understand how it is being called and how it actually works, like the functions, the function A, the function my function, and all? Yes, okay. So Anvit, your doubt is, so like, is there any major difference between declaring a function by itself or declaring it using a variable? There are some differences, uh, but in the current stage of your learning curve, you won't be coming across those major differences. So you can assume that all of them perform the same thing, right? Is that clear, Anvit? Okay. Vaibhav, is that clear? Moitro, Shaptarshi and all. Then I'll be going on, then I'll be checking what else is left to cover in this class. I won't take long, right? Because it's already been pretty long. Okay, right. I think I missed teaching this, but right. So let's get rid of all of this, right? Right. How many more classes do we have before the campaigns? This is the third last class. We are going to have one more class where we will be teaching about the objects and stuff, and then we will have the last class regarding the revision, right? And that is basically the end of the summer camp, right? So I'll ask all of you all. There are only 6 people. There are only 5 people, so I expect everyone to answer. But can anyone predict the output, or better even, you have to predict the output? Whatever you think is the output, you can say. Like, you don't have to think a lot. Whatever like first comes to your mind, you can say. After looking at this program, whatever first comes to your mind as the output, you can say in the chat. It will print standard. Shoptoshi is saying it will print standard. Moitro, Vaibhav, it right. Shoptoshi, I'll be explaining that so you don't have to write this. Moitro, Vaibhav, Antara, Anvit. I am kind of confused actually. Right. Anvit, okay, I'll be explaining it. So are you confused regarding this or regarding the later part? Like the part I just covered right now. Are you confused regarding that part or this question particularly? This part, okay. Right. So if I run this, it will only print standard. Now, why is that? Basically, you can basically returns the value of a function as an entirety, right? So when you're calling a function, my function, right? So you are calling a function, let's say my function, right? And so the computer looks at this function, it's like, okay, so I'll execute all the code until I find the return statement. Now, why is that? The computer always looks at the return statement as the ending point of the code, as the return statement usually returns whatever the desired value you want out of this function, right? So like if you want to like you want some kind of a numerical value out of this function, you'll usually return it, right? So the computer usually looks at the return statement as the ending point of the function, and it does not further process the code that has been written after the function, sorry, after the return statement inside the function. So in this case, console.log is not being processed because the return statement has already been called beforehand. So the return statement almost acts as like an ending point of sorts for the function. So it will so when a function is called, it will return so it will execute all the code before the return statement, and then it will return a particular value, but then it will stop. Standard. Now what happens if I write this? So return is like a break, but it gives the values as well, right? Break just like ends a loop. Please explain once again. Right. Think of the return statement as like a full stop, right? If you write if you're like if you're trying to write a sentence, right? If you just want to write one sentence, then you will write this is a sentence. Let's say if you want to write a particular sentence, this is a sentence, and you will write this is a sentence, and then you will apply a full stop, right? And since you only want to write one sentence, anything outside of this will not be considered inside the sentence, right? Vaibhav, did you understand? Like, did you get what I am trying to say? Like, any like acha, no, acha. Then think of return as like a security guard, right? Think of it as a security guard. Now let's say you are going to the going to meet someone at their home, right? Yeah, I'm explaining once again. Let's say you are going to meet someone at their house, right? Now what now they have a security guard, right? Now the security guard is forced to like call the person for whom you are visiting and ask them if you are truly visiting them, or if you are a stranger to them, right? Now the security once you go to their particular house, right, the security guard will ask you to tell your name, and then the security guard will call the owner of the house and ask, right, this particular person is trying to enter the house. Is he a relative, friend, acquaintance, whatever, right? And if the answer is yes, then it will let you in, right? So you can almost think of this as a security guard, right? When you're calling a function, there's a particular security guard. Now the security guard does all the work that is inside the function, right? It will, let's say if you're doing a plus b, it will execute all of the things it needs to execute. It will operate in a standard procedure, and then after that it will send you to the person's home, right? It will and it won't and the security guard won't let you go otherwise, right? You can almost think of return in a similar way, right? If you call the return statement in a function, it will just stop executing the code after the return statement, and it will just send whatever we have written beside the return statement to the function, and therefore it will like use that particular value, right? So any code that you write above the return statement actually gets executed, right? So if you write var a is equal to 10, var b is equal to 10, it will get executed, right? If you write var c is equal to a plus b, it will get executed, right? It all of these will get executed. You can also console.log see it, all of these will get executed, right? But The thing is that the moment it sees the return statement, it returns whatever value the return statement has to return, in this case, which is standard, right? And then after that, if you go on to write some code, right? If you want to, like, let's say console log the value of a after returning standard, it won't be able to do that, because it will just stop executing the function as soon as it sees the return statement. It's basically a break statement, but it returns the value as well. Did you understand, Vaibhav? Yes, good, right. So that's been all for today. Thanks a lot. Okay, so that's basically all for today. If you have any doubts, please write that in the chat, or you can just enable your mic and speak up. If you have any doubts, why did you use console.log function b and not console.log new function x? I did do that, Anvit. Wait a second. So your query is that why did we use this, right? So as you know, and as I've taught you guys, right, a parameter is something that you pass in a function, right? What does it do? It acts, it just basically takes any value which you give in the first bracket when you call the function, right? You have to remember this. It will take the values when you call the function. X right now does not have any value, but when you call the function and give, and if you pass the value b inside the first brackets, right, then x will be designated a value of b, right? And right now, if you console.log, let's say, wait, and now if we console.log x, we will see that x basically has the value of b, right? This is because x is a parameter that you are passing through the, but then you didn't need to use console.log. I did not need to use console.log where the last line. No, you still need to use console.log, right? If you want to return standard, if you see the return statement is not console.log, right? The return statement basically returns the value, right? It replaces this whole new function b with the new value, which is standard. But then we are not console.logging standard, because it won't be displayed to it can't be displayed to the terminal without getting console log, right? And what return basically does is that, like, wherever you return the value of a function, right? Let's say new function, let's say b. So what basically happens is that it replaces the new function b with the new value which is being returned, which is standard, right? So doing this is the same as doing this. No, Anvit, it's okay to be confused. It's because we are covering a lot of topics today, right? And it's 1 p.m. So, but did you understand why? Like, yes, right. So I'll be posting a quiz right now, or by the start of tomorrow, or sorry, by the end of tomorrow. And I hope you guys actually attempt the quiz. I have, and do the assignments, right? I have only got like 3 to 4 assignments, not more than that. But there are like what, 20 people in the, there are 20 people in the summer camp thing. There are like 20 people, right? So, right. Aryaman, are you present? Aryaman has left the class, right? When will the video be uploaded? I think it will be uploaded by tomorrow. I think it will be up. Aryaman to. I mean, Aryaman was there the whole class, and I asked him to answer, but he did not answer. So I don't really understand why. By the way, Antara, can you just stop the recording?